Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, April 23rd. We are now moving into our special meeting, our budget study session with City Council. On our agenda, we have the review of the proposed budget for fiscal years 2018-19 and 2019-20. Will be the review and final direction on budget.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Tonight, we are going to be reviewing for you where we are in terms of the proposed budget that we have discussed at greater length in the last 2 weeks with the council, and you were provided departmental presentations on the accomplishments of the last 2 years that the departments have achieved, and then their budget proposals for the next 2-year period, as well as their goals and objectives. So tonight, we just want to review the most pertinent parts of the budget with you, to remind you about some of the major concerns, and then also to, at this point in time, respond first to a couple of questions that were raised. You wanted additional information, and we have developed that information for you so we can review that with you, and then to offer you an opportunity to provide whatever direction that you would like at this point in time about any aspect of the budget going forward. So with that, I'll have our Finance Director, Mr. Chu, go through and review the citywide expenditures and provide you with the budget summary.
This table summarizes the fiscal year 2019 proposed budget by department. The first column is the general fund proposed budget. Total general fund budget for fiscal year 2019 is at $85.4 million. The second column is the proposed budget for the other funds. This includes internal service fund, gas tax, enterprise funds, projected at $84.4 million. Since the budget was presented to the Council on April the 12th, Economic and Development Department informed Finance that only $3.8 million is earmarked for the future affordable housing project instead of the original budget of $5.9 million. So when you look at the other funds focusing on item number 6 ECD, you see that change from the original $7.6 million to the revised number of $5.4 million. This is the latest information that we received from ECD department. So the very last column is the total proposed budget for the city at $169.8 million for fiscal year 2019. So the next slide is the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget. General fund budget increased by around $4.5 million to $89.9 million. The increase is mainly due to increase in CalPERS employer contribution, salary and benefit adjustment, and the increase in the pension obligation bond payment. Other funds decreased slightly by around $1.6 million to $82.8 million. The total proposed budget for fiscal year 2020 is at $172 million, the very last column. Now we focus on the key driver of the structural budget deficit. On the expenditure side, salary and benefit account for over 75% of the general fund budget, or $65 million of the total general fund budget of $85 million. And the projected increase in workforce costs such as healthcare, overtime, and salary adjustment to maintain a competitive workforce will be a major challenge for the city to balance the budget moving forward. In addition, CalPERS costs are projected to increase by around 18% annually between fiscal year 2018 and 2020. So citywide in 2018, the city paid $13.5 million to CalPERS, and it increased by 2.4 million or 18% to 15.9 million in 2019, and another 18% increase to 18.7 million. So you see a 18% increase, but our general fund revenue only increased by an average of around 3% per year. So the next bullet is the pension obligation bond debt service payment, increased by around 4% annually from 3.8 million in the fiscal year 2019 to 4.6 million in fiscal year 2024. It is a escalating debt service payment, increased 4% annually. Assuming on a pay-as-you-go basis, the retiree healthcare costs are projected to increase by around 5% annually, from 3.4 million in 2019 to 4.7 million in fiscal year 2026. On the revenue side, the city does not have a diversified revenue base to support the city expenditure. And over 65% of the general fund revenue are from three major sources. They are property tax, sales tax, utility user tax. In order to balance the budget, the proposed budget includes the use of 3 million of excess EREF revenue to reduce the general fund budget deficit. And it is very important to note that the excess EREF is a one-time revenue and which should not be used to fund ongoing operating expense. And in summary, the projected annual general fund revenue growth is around 3% per year. The 3% growth led behind the project expenditure increase, such as CalPERS employer contribution rate increase and the salary and benefit adjustment. Now we look at the general fund summary. This table summarizes the general fund revenue and expenditure projection for fiscal year 2019 and 2020. Projected revenue for fiscal year 2019 is at 81 million, and the projected expenditure is 85.4 million, resulting in a deficit of 4.4 million. And projected deficit for the following fiscal year 2020 is 5.7 million. In order to balance the proposed budget for the next two fiscal years, the city will have to dip into the general fund reserve for 4.4 million in fiscal year 2019 and 5.7 million in fiscal year 2020. I would like to emphasize the proposed budget has already included 1.5 million reduction from the general fund department in each of the fiscal year. So that means in this proposed budget, all the general fund department has already reduced the budget by a total of 3 million. Now we look at the proposed general fund balancing strategies. This slide summarizes the proposed budget reduction for fiscal year 2019 and 2020 with a total saving of around 3 million at the bottom here. General government reduced the operating expenditure with a saving of $200,000 in the 2 years. ECD, Economic and Community Development, they eliminate one vacant senior building inspector position and add 2 building inspector positions with a general fund net impact of $200,000. Library and Recreation eliminate one vacant recreation program supervisor and one vacant library assistant 2 positions. They also increase fee and reduce program expenditure with a total saving of $400,000. Police Department, they freeze 2 vacant police officer positions and 2 vacant police sergeant positions. And they also reduce operating expense and hourly staff with a total saving of 2.4 million over the next 2 years. Public Works transfers 0.43 FTE from the general fund to other fund with a total saving of $200,000. So all in all, the 2-year general fund department reduced the budget by a total of 3 million. Now we,
It's worth noting that, can you go back to the last slide? When the finance director talks about the reductions in positions that you can see here and the equivalent savings, that savings is helping to reduce the budget gap. So it's not really savings. We're not putting it in a savings account. We're using it to lower that structural budget deficit. And we're applying the potential savings going forward to reducing what would be an otherwise larger gap than the one that we described for you earlier on in the previous screens. So yes, it is savings because those positions are frozen or eliminated, but the savings are then reallocated in order to reduce the structural budget deficit.
now we look at the general fund reserve. This table shows the projected general fund unassigned fund balance for the current fiscal year and the next 2 fiscal years. The city financial policy is to maintain an unassigned fund balance equal to 15% of the annual budget expenditure. In fiscal year 2019, the unassigned fund balance decreased to 18.4 million, or equal to 21.5% of the general fund reserve, after using 4.4 million to balance the budget. In fiscal year 2020, the unassigned fund balance decreased to 12.7 million, or equal to 14.1%, after using 5.7 million to balance the budget. You can see the red number here is the use of the general fund reserve to balance the structural deficit, 4.4 million in 2019, and the use of 5.7 million in 2020. So this is the very last line is the general fund reserve. Current year is projected at 27.9. It will drop to 21.5% in fiscal year 19 and reduce further to around 14% in 2020. Any question on the general fund reserve?
Do you want to finish that in days of operating expenses? Do you have that there?
Yes, the next line is the day of the operating expense.
On the next one?
Yeah.
Great.
And here the city general fund spend an average of around 7.3 million per month to pay for employee salary and benefit and other operating expense. So in fiscal year 2019, the 18.4 million is equal to 2.5 months of operating expense, or 80 days of saving in the bank. In fiscal year, this is 2020, not 2019, this is in fiscal year 2020, we have 1.7 million of operating reserve, and that equal to around 50 days of reserve in the bank. So you can see it dropped significantly between the current year, around 3 months to 2.5 months to 1.5 months. Now we look at the proposed budget position change details. Now we look at the general fund position first. ECD eliminate 1 vacant senior building inspector and add 2 building inspector. Finance request to reclassify 1 PC land technician to a senior PC land technician. Library and Recreation eliminate 1 vacant recreation program supervisor and 1 vacant library assistant 2 position. And Public Work reallocate 43% of the Director of Public Work position to other funds. Police, they freeze 2 vacant police sergeant position and 2 vacant police officer position. So all in all, general fund, there's a reduction of 1.43 FTE in the next 2 budget. The first year saving is around 1.2 million. The second year reduction is a 1.3 million. So the 2-year reduction is a 2.5 million, or 1.43 FTE. This is the general fund. Now we look at the other funds. Look at the Public Works Department. Okay, they reallocate 43% of the director position to the other fund. This includes engineering, motor vehicle, and building. And they eliminate one vacant traffic signal and street light technician, one vacant mechanic position, one vacant street maintenance worker position, and one vacant custodian position. So all in all, the net saving will be 3.57 FTE, or a total saving of around $800,000 for a 2-year budget. Now we look at the water and wastewater. On the water side, the department proposed to eliminate one vacant distribution system maintenance worker and add one distribution system manager. On the wastewater side, 3 positions will be eliminated. This includes the collection and distribution system manager, and collection system field supervisor, and the vacant warehouse clerk. They also propose to add 5 positions. This includes the collection system manager. I want to emphasize that is the collection system manager is currently the employee is in the collection system field supervisor. They want to reclassify that position to become a system manager. So that's why you see one elimination and one addition, just like a wash with no impact to the FTE. And they also add one safety training compliance officer, one plant and equipment maintenance electrician, one lab technician, and one office assistant. So the net impact to the water and wastewater fund is the addition of 2 positions, or around $330,000 impact to the budget on the first year, and $350,000 net impact to the second year of the budget. So when you add the 2, it's around $600,000 impact to the budget. Question on the water and wastewater budget?
There were no changes from last time there was a presentation, right? These are all...
It's pretty much the same, no changes, except I provide the council with a very detailed breakdown by department. So instead of looking at those like small organization chart, you have like a 1 page that summarizes the entire changes. So I will turn over to the city manager for the final direction on the budget.
So one of the things that the council discussed at some length on the first evening of the budget review meetings was about your priorities. And I won't go through all of these. You have them in front of you, but these are as they were presented to you originally. But can you go to slide 24, please? So it was, during the discussion, Council Member Sylvester raised the issue of moving some of the priorities around. So on the left column of this slide, you see the way the council priorities are listed. They're not necessarily listed in relative importance, although one could argue that economic development and revenue generation and public safety have always been top priorities. But all of the priorities listed there have been priorities that the council has said are of equal importance over time. However, on the right-hand side, you have the proposed council priorities based on the input that we got from Councilmember Sylvester, that he believed that community and civic support should rise to the top, followed by government operations. And so we have presented this to you just for the sake of discussion. And if the council wants to revise it in any other way, we're here to take that input from you. If you want to add or detract to your list of priorities, we're prepared to make those changes as well. So this is your opportunity, starting with the priorities, to make whatever changes that you would like.
At this point, I'm asking my colleagues if they have any comments. At the last meeting, I did mention if, to keep in mind that we would be discussing this evening. Vice Mayor.
I know at the budget sessions, you had mentioned the issue of affordable housing, and is your thought, I'm asking the city manager, is it
Yes.
the land use component where affordable housing is going to be as a priority, or is that under?
Well, it's listed in the council priorities under the council's departments, but if you want to specifically call it out in this list, then we can either make it a standalone priority or you can include it in land use, because obviously when there's opportunities for development, we can include it. But what I heard from the council is that it is a standalone priority, and if you want to just add that to the list, that's certainly.
I'll leave it up to the mayor, because she mentioned it, and I thought it was a good idea at the time.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I think, given the state of what we've heard from both our residents and workers around the need for affordability, I think we would put it in.
So is it affordable housing specifically, or housing?
I think,
Or housing and then some subset of affordable housing, transit-oriented housing, I'm just trying to get a
I
sense of
think-
how you would like to include that priority.
I think putting in affordable housing.
Yeah.
I think land use in itself would have the other market rate units in there because of how development usually works, but I think we need to identify affordable housing as separate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And where would you place
Well,
that?
yeah, what priority would you want to place that? And, well, first of all, let me ask you this. We've numbered these. These are not necessarily the relative importance of them. We've just numbered them for the sake of a list. But if you want us to rearrange the numbering so that what we're showing on the right-hand column now, 8 would become 1, 7 would become 2, we can certainly do that. Or we can just say they're all equally important, and it's a list of what the priorities are and everything that we do, because the council priorities drive the programs and services in every single department. So when you heard the departmental presentations, their activities are tied to these various priorities.
When we started the budget process, I asked you and the indication around this, whether or not the numbers on the current council priorities basically were stating, that they were numbered in priority. I think when you mentioned it, that it was numbered in priority. And now you're stating that it could be numbered or just stated in general and have equal priority.
Right, you can have it in equal priority. The
But the
council
last-
historically has said that this reflected the priorities that they felt in relative order of their importance.
Okay, so that's one
But
of
it's
the
not hard
clarifications.
fast. I mean, you can change it whatever way you want. If you want to raise something up to a higher priority, as was suggested by Councilmember Sylvester, then you can certainly do that. And if you want to specifically say the first one listed is the most important, then we can say they are listed by level of importance.
I would like to suggest that we look at the one on the left, remove the numbers, and that sort of solves the problem. It says, these are all important, but it doesn't place necessarily one above the other. Because I can just see us, I mean, if each one of us has, what our most important thing is, we could be here for 3 hours arguing, oh, it's a 6.5, it's a, we could just take the numbers off.
Yeah,
And then-
I think I agree with that, because I think if a person looks at that and they're going to think that maybe we don't consider public safety as important, when I definitely think it should be at the top, but equally so, I think a lot of those others are just as important. And I don't want to give the impression we think public safety is much lower on the scale.
So I think, just for purposes of explanation, in the past, when the council has looked at this, the very first listed priority of economic development, the reason why that is there is because it was felt that that drives everything else. Because if we don't have money, then we can't provide for public safety or transportation or infrastructure or any of the other things. So the very first one has been expressed as of ultimate importance to ensure that all of the priorities on the list could be met. And so it doesn't mean that public safety is not important. It just means if we don't have the money, we can't fund public safety adequately or any of the other items on the list.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I was the one who had asked to change things around. I like the idea of removing all the numbers. My main reason for moving community and civic support was, as I was looking at the org chart, basically, we on council act on behalf of the people. And subsequently, I think our constituents and the people come first. That's why I had asked. Well, I'm more than happy to remove the numbers. Coming from what I used to do before, I'd love to put public safety number one, but I think they are all equally important, but we should not forget that we answer to the people, and that's why
So I certainly appreciate that, and that's the reason why on the overall city organization chart, the people of
Right.
Daly City are at the top. The community and civic support, council member, really relates to the programs that we are providing. It's not the residents of the community themselves, but the kinds of programs that we are providing specifically for the community, like the newsletter, like
don't you lunches.
all the different kinds of outreach activities that we provide through my office as well as the other city departments. It's really around programmatic issues.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Sylvester. I think moving forward, it seems like taking off the numerical numbers on here would seem best. And if there's any other priorities that would want to be added, and for certain, we should put affordable housing as mentioned earlier. But if there's no other areas to be added, I think that's kind of the best way forward.
So I would just raise one more thing. Lawrence, can you go back to slide 21, please? So maybe it would be helpful as well for you, now that you have identified all the various priorities, to just take a look. You have the handout in front of you. If there's any specific things that you want to call out in addition to or in replacement of the items, the sub points here in blue, relative to those priorities. If there are statements that the council wants to make about those priorities, then this would be an opportunity for you to provide us with that input.
Well, I think for number one, with economic development and revenue enhancement, I think it's important. I know we say identify revenue generating opportunities to expand economic base. I think instead of just identifying, I think we need to be more affirmative, and so create the economic development plan to generate opportunities to expand economic base. Because identifying, I feel like we can take a more proactive approach, or even state it. And
Was that,
Vice Mayor?
Mayor, I remember you had mentioned during the budget sessions that you wanted some kind of a plan, a finance plan or something. What was that? You remember
Yeah.
the discussion? What was that
So
about?
it was I think I mentioned like the economic development.
Is that the same?
Plan, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Just to make sure that, moving forward.
So we had talked about adding a position for an economic development specialist or coordinator. And so as part of that discussion, I suggested to you that probably the first step would be to work on developing an economic development strategy so that if we hired a position, they would know what their purpose was. They'd have, a focal point for the work that we believe that is important for someone in that kind of a position to be focused on. So I really do think we haven't had a formal economic development strategy created in recent years that takes a look at the entire city and identifies the opportunities that are available and how the city should focus its efforts in trying to encourage economic development in particular areas that Daly City is, positioned to help to grow and develop. So I think that's what we were talking about, and we can certainly add, pursuing an economic development strategy, hiring a consultant, working with the economic and community development director to develop that strategy, and then identify what a potential new position could do to help implement that strategy.
So would you be putting here as another bullet point under number 1 there, to develop a citywide economic
So
strategy?
that was what I was mentioning earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's in line with that.
So we also talked about the issue of Engine 95 and the campaign that we might engage in putting something on the ballot.
Not specific.
Is that something we should state as a priority? Because my fear is if we don't have something in writing, in print, that I want to keep that on the forefront, and I'm sure it's covered by public safety, the blurb that's on there. I'm just wondering if we need to.
So can you, are you looking at implementing that in the first year or the second year of the next 2-year budget? I think if you focus on the second year, you're going to have more time to develop the campaign and the plan and all that, because we were kind of at this position the last time, and we really just didn't have enough time to put out an adequate campaign. So are you wanting to look at that for the second year of the 2-year budget?
Well, I want to start on it. I think we talked about we need to start it.
The work has to be
needs to start
laid
it
out.
now.
But in terms
Yeah.
of laying the foundation to go to the people
Yeah.
in November of 2019.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And if it was in 2019, that would be a postcard ballot, correct? Since it's not a normal election year?
Would that be on the June or November?
But you just said,
November.
November. Okay.
but we only have elections in even years.
Okay.
So then it would have to be 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
And 2020 is a big election. So there's a strategy there that, so maybe exactly when, we might want to leave a little open-ended. That
Yeah.
we're going to
Yeah.
begin
Well,
the
there's,
process.
and I think the vice mayor did say working on it, or putting the effort now. It's really, the strategy around that is, I think, really ensuring that there's adequate education out there. And so
Right.
whether it's the presidential election time or if it's a special one, I think it's what he mentioned, like how do we put this and have it as a priority so that therefore it's not too late in the future, so. Okay. So if, okay, Councilmember Sylvester.
Madam Mayor, I have some questions on the presentation, not specific to these bullet points. I think we're still on this topic of bullet points, modification and changes, but I have questions on the
Okay,
presentation.
so are there any more comments on the bullet points before we move forward into the
Well,
presentation?
let's flip
Finish
to
that?
the next page. then.
Okay.
Go to the next page, please. Any changes, additions? Okay, hearing none, good, and this is the last page. I think you changed.
So if there's no other comments on the city council priorities, Councilmember Sylvester, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Page 10, which is, I guess, is slide number 10. Did I have that right?
Correct.
Yes. I believe we had asked for additional information, I say, for the past 8 years of the budget, what was proposed and versus actual. And
Oh, I thought you were going to have copies.
I want to know how close we were to, I would hope that would
Can
be
you
coming.
put it up? You have it. You have the, Lawrence sent me this information. I thought he was just sending it to me, and he thought I was going to make copies of it, so we'll put it up for you. You had asked for a summary of,
Over the years, what was
from 2009, the general fund historical expenditure.
expenditure
From
and
fiscal year 2009 to 2017. And we did actually have this, but I thought it was just for me.
Yeah, so it was actually the projections and the actuals,
To see how
right?
close we are to
Right,
what the- yeah,
right.
how off we are. And you'll always be off a little.
I mean,
We have not noted that on the share drive, but I can email that to you right after this council meeting.
Okay.
So you
So-
asked question about the North County Fire Authority, what is the Daly City, the different types of call. So we have that information
Good.
ready.
all right.
And also the detailed general fund historical expenditure and revenue, we have a very detailed analysis
Okay.
for you for the fiscal year 2009 through 2017.
Great.
So we
All
have that available for you. It's making copy right now.
All right, thank you so much.
We're going to get you copies of that right now. I'm
Yes,
sorry
ma'am.
about that.
Okay, page 12, slide number 12. Now, I haven't been here that long, and it's actually my first budget presentation. And since the recession, I know many departments have asked to cut back, to eliminate positions. Now, in going through the information, I see vacant positions. So obviously, when we say freeze vacant positions, what caused these positions to become vacant? Did somebody retire and then we said, well, let's see how we do without that position? It's a vacant position, then we just get rid of the position. How does that work?
So in the last two-year budget, we did eliminate 6 police officer positions. This time around, because of the need to reduce our expenditures to the level that we have discussed since we started, it required us to look at the police department, which is the largest budget in the city, to help to reduce the structural budget deficit. And so as a result of that, there were vacant positions that we then said we are not going to fill in order to achieve the reduction in expenditures that we needed. So we weren't going to lay off anyone, we weren't going to take someone out of a position, but because we didn't have those positions, we have frozen them in the hope that somewhere down the line that we will have sufficient revenue and there will be an opportunity to fill those positions. Because after having eliminated 6 positions in the last 2-year budget, eliminating 2 more positions permanently would have a significant impact on the police department. And although we can't afford to fund those right now, my feeling was that the likelihood was that the council would want to at least reserve the opportunity down the line that if the revenue situation improves, that we would be able to refill those positions.
I would like to add that the major difference between to freeze a position and the elimination to freeze is we hold the budget FTE, so that means the FTE is still in the budget, but we don't provide funding for these 2 positions. So that means in the future, if we have more resources for the city, then department can fill those positions. For those elimination is we remove the FTE from the budget. So that means in the future, if department wants to refill the position again, they need to come to the council and get the council approval to increase the budget FTE. So those are the major difference between freeze and eliminate position.
Thank you. That's half the answer. What determines a vacant position? How did those positions become vacant? Because I see here on slide number 17, you're eliminating 3 vacant positions. How did they become vacant? Or
You also it depends on a different situation. There may be times the employee retire, so that why you create a vacant position. There may be times that the employee find other jobs and left the city.
We just don't refill them.
We don't refill that, so that's why we have a vacant position.
so if these positions were in the budget, it would create some sort of salary savings, but only to apply those savings to reducing the deficit in the budget.
Correct.
It's not like an account that we have.
No.
And the money's just sitting there.
It
It's
just
to
means
reduce.
Absolutely.
All
It just
right.
means that
All
the
right.
budget deficit
Right.
becomes a little
All
lower
right.
than it would be if we kept that position.
All right. But at the same time, I just hate to see if somebody retires and we just don't fill the position when we originally had the budget for it, and I think the position.
Well, as we've explained through the budget discussions, council member, 80% of the budget is personnel. So when we're trying to reduce the budget deficit, the way that we can do that, where it is going to have the impact that we need of actually reducing the numbers that we need, we have to rely on positions, because we can't reduce the structural budget deficit on office supplies. We can't reduce the budget deficit on vehicles. It has to be personnel, because that is the largest cost center in the budget.
Got it. Thank you. I had 3 questions. It's all been answered now. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor.
And we're providing you now with the follow-up information you had asked for regarding the North County Fire Authority, the breakdown of the major incidents just for Daly City, so we have provided that for you. And then the chart that Councilmember Sylvester had asked for, the historic expenditure history for the general fund from 2009 to 2017.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the council? Okay, seeing none. I think that's,
Oh, yeah.
So hearing no other direction, then we will begin the process of finalizing the budget for you based on what was presented and the changes that you've just requested. We'll make all those changes in the final draft budget that we will bring back to you.
We're planning to bring the budget back to the council for the approval, the first council meeting in May. So you see a draft of the proposed budget.
okay. Okay, thank you very much. Do I have a?
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Lawrence and Ms. Martell,
Yes,
exactly what I was looking for. So I just want to say thank you for putting it together.
you're very welcome.
I will review.
Yeah, I'm just giving a quick look over that, and it looks like, other than for special circumstances, we've been pretty close.
Except 2016,
That was pretty far.
Well, yeah, that's due to salary adjustments and the increase in CalPERS. I mean, that's a special situation. And then, of course, in 2012 was the redevelopment thing. Yeah. But all the other years, it's been a little bit overspent, a little bit underspent.
Or maybe at the future meeting, given that we are the only ones that are able to see this document, possibly just presenting it so that we're the only ones on the dais that could see this, that we could present it, and so that also people in the audience and watching can also understand.
When we come back for your consideration of the proposed budget, we will incorporate this and show you, based on what's happened in the past, what we would expect to happen in the future. In addition, we are planning to schedule a review of the city's financial sustainability plan.
Long-term financial plan in the first council meeting in May.
So along with the
okay.
budget, we will be looking at the long-term financial plan so that you can see the progress that we're making towards addressing the issues that were first identified when we presented that long-term plan to you a few years ago.
Ms. Martell, on the North County Fire handout,
Yes.
I see a date range from January to the end of December, but it doesn't indicate by city of the JPA.
So this was pulled out. If you look at the top,
Yes.
under North County Fire, it
Yes.
says Daly City.
Right.
So these are the Daly City numbers.
Okay, I had asked to, if we can compare it with the areas that is served by North County Fire, because it's my understanding that Daly City pays the bulk
Yeah.
of the salaries for these fire officials. So, for instance, I see 139 fires for this time frame, and I assume that those were all in Daly City.
These were all in Daly City. These stats are specifically for Daly City. That was my understanding of what you were asking for.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that Daly City wasn't overpaying for the services, since under the JPA we serve.
So, Councilmember, under the
Yes.
JPA, we pay our salaries to our firefighters. Pacifica pays the salaries for their firefighters, and Brisbane pays the salaries for their firefighters. Both of those other jurisdictions pay towards the administrative overhead that is required for us to provide the chief and all the administration and training for the authority. But each respective city determines the compensation level and benefits for their firefighters, and they are
Okay.
responsible for paying that for their respective firefighters.
Our fire chief, does he have jurisdiction over all four?
He does,
cities?
and so each of the cities contribute a share of his salary.
Okay.
That's the overhead. That's the overhead that the cities are paying for. Him, the deputy chief,
Yes.
the fire marshal, the training division, all of the things that they benefit from, that Daly City manages for them, they pay an administrative fee for that. So they're covering their proportional share of that cost, including the fire chief and those staff.
All right, thank you, Ms. Martell.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Sylvester. At this point, do I have a motion to adjourn? All right. Thank you very much.